It's Easter weekend, a Christian holiday celebrated widely across the UK. Yet one priest thinks that some politicians effectively use religion for political gain. And we have him here himself. It's the Reverend Michael Coren. He's joining me now. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. Now, you've said that right-wing Christian MPs are growing, but you said that their beliefs are confusing. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Well, their numbers are growing. I saw the headline, which I thought was rather odd. It implied that they were getting fatter. I didn't mean that. I think their numbers are growing. Look, it's way more an American problem than a British one. In the United States, Donald Trump, quite obviously, is parading religion around, and very few people who take their religion seriously. Well, no, let me rephrase that. Very few people who've really thought hard about their religion say that Donald Trump is a believing Christian. But he does play that game all the time. But in the UK, yes, there are a number of MPs, and they are conservative. I mean, I don't see it in the Labour Party or the Lib Dems, really, who seem to be inspired by conservative Christianity, Christian nationalism, if you like, which is new in Britain. I mean, I don't remember this happening in the past. Tony Blair waited to become a Roman Catholic until he'd left office. And it's very rare for politicians to talk about their faith. I don't recall David Cameron doing so, even going back to earlier leaders. But I think it's a growing phenomenon, and it comes from the US, and it's being replicated in Britain.
I mean, I wonder about that, because you might recall when Tim Farron was very open about his religious beliefs, his Christian values, and his views on homosexuality as a kind of sinful method of behaviour. Do you think so? But he got pilloried for that, didn't he? So maybe it's something about the British electorate. We don't like people of faith or people who are too overt about their faith in charge. Is that because we want this strict separation of church and state?
Well, it's a good question. It's ironic, isn't it? Because actually Britain doesn't have a separation of church and state. The US does, officially, although in the United States, if a presidential candidate said they were an atheist, I don't think they could ever be elected president. But in Britain, there is no separation. But you're right with Tim Farron and, what was it, Kate Forbes and the SNP. And I don't think they were treated very well. Now, if their views are, if they are opposed to equal marriage and blessing same-sex couples, stand by them. The problem with Farron and Forbes is that they weren't sure what to say in public. I think if they would have been bolder, they would have actually done better. But yeah, there can be, and some politicians have written about this, actually. Michael Gove, one in particular. They've said that Christians are treated unfairly in the public square, and that's probably true as well. I mean, you know as well as I do that most other religions, if an MP said, or if a politician said, I'm Muslim, I'm Jewish, I'm Hindu, people would be nervous of criticizing. But if you say you're Christian, it does seem to be that you will automatically be criticized, particularly on certain issues. Not so much your faith in Christ, but your political views on women's reproductive rights, equal marriage, things like that. Because you're a Christian, where do you stand on those? So it's not a level playing field.
So what about when it comes to America? I mean, as you say, it's very unlikely that anyone who proclaims himself to be an atheist, for instance, would ever be elected to the White House. But do you think, therefore, that this encourages a kind of inauthenticity, that candidates are therefore proclaiming their love for Jesus Christ when they really don't mean it at all?
Yeah, I do. Look, without being party political, Donald Trump was very much indifferent to most of these social issues before he ran for office. He's a man of a very checkered past, and I find it difficult to believe, I'm not here to judge, but I find it difficult to believe that Donald Trump is a believing Christian. Barack Obama, on the other hand, who was criticized by the Christian right, was actually and is a very devout believer. I think that I wouldn't say the same for all Democrats, but that was certainly the case with him. But with Trump, he has so politicized Christianity. Now, there are conservative Christians who say, I don't believe Trump is a Christian, but he enables Christians to flourish. They compare him to leaders of the past, like Constantine in Rome and so on. He's changed the Supreme Court. He's made it better for Christians, even though he might not be one himself. But many voters in the US, I can assure you, are convinced that Donald Trump is a devout Christian. And it becomes ludicrous after a while, because his personal behavior, the way he treats others, the way he regards opponents, the way he talks about people, that's not really very Christian, is it?
Well, can I ask you, I mean, is it even really possible to be the head of a nation and a party that is so invested in capitalism when the teaching of Jesus is quite clear about rich men and their likelihood of them entering the kingdom of heaven? Doesn't he quite unambiguously say you have to give all your money away?
My golly, I didn't know I'd be able to talk about this on this station, but, well, I wouldn't say it's unambiguous, but he does say to a young man who says, what must I do to be a real believer? Sell everything and give it to the poor. Now, I don't think Jesus was telling everyone to do that. But what he was trying to say, I think, is if you're rooted to this life by money, wealth and power and ambition, then it's very hard to be a real believer. But yet he was quite socialistic. He did hang out with people who are on the margins.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to cut out there, unfortunately, but thank you for joining me.